So I'm just wrapping up this way and opening up for questions. I'm just going to go, and I guess I have to stop sharing and go to the questions.
Yep, go ahead and stop sharing. No need for you to go to the questions, so we'll go ahead and ask them. Guys, now's the time to ask questions. Go ahead and fill out the Q&A, whatever you'd like to ask Philippe. I have a couple of questions to get us started. How important is it to you to share your story, products with people that are in fame within that industry, or just famous people in general? I know that can be a pretty big driver for body care products to get them to promote your product.
That's a great question. We have a marketing guy who works with us, and he keeps saying, you know, who could we approach? Who could we work with? Who could we sign on from? Somebody that's famous, somebody that's very known. And I have to say that's an area that we haven't touched or used. And you're absolutely right that it's a great way to leverage to create visibility. And we haven't touched that aspect at all. Although it's a very, I should say, a very good way. And I also think that maybe we just haven't found. Because to me it's about values too, and it's about synergies. And so I guess part of Stacy and I's thought is we'd like that person to really like what we do, not just endorse it for money or whatever, which we wouldn't have anyway. we couldn't pay Shakira to endorse her products, but it's a great way.
Yeah, it's something we were looking at towards right before we ended up selling the company was marketing towards the famous, to try and get their promotions. And I've dealt with other people in starting their companies, and that's something they started focusing on maybe too soon. I think that it's something you focus on after you've gone through the business for a little while and really have it down, so that, I mean, if someone like Shakira starts marketing your product, that's going to be a huge demand increase on your product line. And I think it's something you want to be prepared for. And that's another thing to focus on, is that you've done the business for a little while, and you're prepared for that influx of business. The next question I have is, do you hire a sales? You said you did for you have a marketing team to market your product. What kind of commission do you offer them for their sales, and how do you determine that commission?
So the marketing help that we have currently is a guy that comes in 3 days a week. He comes from David's Tea. For those who know that company, it's now an American franchise. I'm not sure, but it started here in Canada, and I think they've got 80 stores for tea, like tea stores. So he had a pretty good background. So he's been helping us. He's on salary, but we work with brokers at times to leverage their territories, their connections. In terms of percentages, typically, just so you understand our cost structure, most stores that we work with make a 40% margin, and we have a few small distributors that make 25% margin. So to me, a distributor is somebody who buys from us, sells to stores, and then so it's starting to have a few different levels. But brokers will make between 5 to 10%. But to me, a broker is somebody who does not touch the product at all. They make a sale, they activate their contacts, and they don't touch the product. So it does not involve logistics. A distributor sells and distributes logistic wise. So a broker, we have a deal with a lady who is working in the hotel industry. She's never going to touch the products, but she's going to make sales. So I believe it's critically important to. I mean, sales in the end is the heart. It's the blood, right? If there's no sales, no movement, no money, no resources. So that's probably my strongest point. Is I love people. I love to develop, and I mostly love to build relationships, partnerships with our customers. Like, I don't see us as a supplier. I see us as a partner. Like, we do social media initiatives together, but we always there's always room for more sales because, because we are excited to grow. And I mean, we've refused Costco just because that's not, it's just not, we're not playing on the same level. Like, it's like, okay, you're going to do this and that for me. And we're like, well, no. It's not going to work. So I say more sales, yes, but more sales in markets that respect and value what we do. So it's a long answer to your short question, but 5 to 10% usually for brokers and sales agents.
All right. Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you. And then how do you go about finding those brokers and sales agents? How did you get started in reaching out to those people?
A personal philosophy in developing the businesses and partnerships is to go with relationships. For me, business is not just business. I want to work with people that I enjoy and that I get along with. Because what's the point of working with somebody who's great at sales, but every time we talk, we get into a fight or we disagree, or that person's not honoring our values, and to me, when I read the book, Delivering Happiness by Zappos, it was Tony Hsieh was describing that for him, the way he's built, and this is a pretty successful company. Forget about sustainability or whatever. I'm not saying they're not sustainable, but just as a philosophy, he said, and I read the book also from Starbucks, and I have a blank for his name, the founder, but Schwartz. And he talks about, both him and the founder of Zappos talk about the way they build their relationship, their partnerships was based on relationships. If the relationship wasn't jiving, they wouldn't go into business. And they've sometimes turned down $1 million deals because the relationship was not there. And so how do we go about finding brokers or distributors? We go with sure the upside of the partnership, but we go with people that we actually enjoy talking to, and then we share values, because that's what makes life magical. It's not so much that you've tripled your business and you're miserable, but it's that you work with people you enjoy. So we want to share values with those partners.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Zappos. I've been researching Zappos a lot lately. They're a really interesting company. They started to incorporate what's called holacracy, which is a system of management. I wouldn't even say management, but an organizational system based off of a constitution for running their company. Fascinating stuff. If you get a chance, check out holacracy. You might have already checked it out, I don't know, but just fascinating stuff there. Brian asks, and this kind of leads to what you were just talking about, could I get your thoughts on going public and maintaining your permaculture regenerative ethics, and how it would be handled in that mass increase in business, like you were saying with Costco and denying them?
It's a good question. It's a great question. I'm not sure if I'm qualified to answer that question, but I read 2 books. One from Cliff Bar, the company out of California, and I remember reading about their decision to not go public and keep it a private company, exactly to prevent. I'm not suggesting that that's not the right way to do in Brian's case. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying that maybe it's an interest. How about this? How about taking the time to read that book if he hasn't done it? How about reading the book from Sierra Nevada called Beyond the Pale? And Sierra Nevada, the brewing company out of California, and they almost went public, and it's just interesting to hear them out. Maybe it resonates, maybe it doesn't, but I just think I actually feel better about just maybe proposing these books than actually commenting, because I don't think I'm qualified.
Let's not think of it as, I guess going public might have been the wrong phrasing as far as stocks and things go, but going public as in making your brand, reaching out to retailers like Walmart or these different companies.
Okay, I see. Sure. I'm sorry, I misunderstood it. I think it comes down to the very question. I mean, how much, maybe doing farmers market, local markets is all that you need to be satisfied and happy. If you do aspire for more, which is not good or bad, I think one of those steps is to work with partners, retailers, etc. And I think, to maybe base those relationships on shared values really helps to ensure that your integrity is maintained and is continued. And then also, Josiah, you were asking me, how did we find our partners? And I didn't really answer it. I realized we've been going to trade shows. And we've been really mingling with people in our industry, and over time, I mean, you get to know people. It's like you hear about people looking for opportunities, and you also reach out. You say, "Hi, I'm looking for an opportunity here and there." So I think this is so basic, right? Just socializing and getting out there, and I'm not that skilled with social media, but sometimes there's more platforms to exchange. So, but to me, I guess my guiding principle is to make sure that, and I think this relates to Brian's question, is that there's value sharing. That the partners you have, whether it's a store or an online store or I'm not sure what product or service you have, but I think it's absolutely, if you so wish, important to expand and develop an ecosystem. It could be in the form of a salesperson or somebody replacing you at the farm or in the business, so you can go and sell and develop relationships, partnerships, to see yourself as a partner, not a supplier. I think that's how we see. I feel good about that, because I don't care. It's not so much. It doesn't matter how big or small you are. It matters that you're comfortable within your business, and you're working with people you enjoy and that share your values.
Yeah, absolutely. And to tie into that a little bit, the next question I have is, when you're choosing your suppliers, what do you look for in keeping those permaculture ethics? Are you looking for suppliers like of your beeswax to your labeling companies? Are you looking for suppliers that are more on the ethical side that matches your ethics, or does it come down to the cost and benefits?
I'll give you an example. My label supplier. Of course, I don't care if he eats the same kind of food as I do, because it's irrelevant. What I care about is that we have a human interaction that's jiving. His cost is important, and I could save money by using somebody else, but at what cost? I mean, how would the service be? How reliable would that person be, or that company is? So to me, reliability, honesty, price is important. Of course, I wouldn't work with him if he charged me 10 times the price he's charging me today. I think there could be somebody else somewhere else that could do as good a service, and who I would have a good relationship with. But to me, it's relationships. And what I mean by relationships is that there's a common joy in exchange, and there's a common satisfaction. There's a relationship that's beyond business. And I think those, to me, that is such a permaculture principle, because if you have a good relationship with somebody, to me, that relationship is sustainable. They'll be looking after you, you'll be looking after them. And this is when there's a trust in place that sometimes amazing creative ideas come out of, that's beyond money. And I'll give you an example. That label guy, I once came to him and said, look, I was approached by another supplier, and they're 25% cheaper. And so we started talking, and I wasn't trying to leverage him into lowering his price, but we ended up talking, and we realized that by reducing our label by 0.5 inch, he could put 3 labels instead of 2 in a roll. Okay, and then also he beat the other guy's price just by talking. But because I had a good relationship with him, we were able to get there. So how do we choose suppliers, partners, etc.? Relationship first, consistency of the products. Price is there, of course. Price is there. We're in business, but if the approach is only price driven, we're going to end up changing suppliers every year, because there's always going to be somebody cheaper. But what kind of relationship do we have with those people? I'd rather, both with my suppliers and my clients, I would rather build long-term relationships. And there's a book I recently read called Big Five for Life. I forget the author. Big Five for Life, and they talk about in the continued book about a business out here in Montreal, and they said that, I forget the percentages, it's so much more profitable to have long-term customers than to constantly get new ones. And my point here is the same. I mean, how much time and energy do you spend finding new suppliers or finding new customers? So again, if you have good relationships with your customers and your suppliers, you're much more likely to build long-term relationships. And to me, that is a permaculture principle, in that it's sustainable. Like, it's efficient. You're able to build things rather than constantly replace. What if you planted an apple tree that died every year? I mean, how much energy do you spend? So what if we found a resilient type of apple tree that lasted for 25 years? Well, to me, that's sustainable business. That's a permaculture principle, and applies to relationships. Building strong relationships based on shared values and suppliers or customers is a sustainable approach, and you can build and develop, not constantly replace and change and chase.
Yeah, and I think that you're negating a lot of negative costs. So it's not all about price. By building or finding those relationships where you're, like you were saying, that you build these relationships, and they're good relationships. Their product line might cost a little more, but in price-wise of what you're getting, but in the long run, that relationship's a lot more valuable and might save you a lot of money than going with a cheaper company that has bad products or ends up going out of business, or who knows what that could happen. But having those strong relationships, I think, saves you a lot of money in the long run compared to what the immediate cost benefit might be.
Yeah, the quality of the relationship, the quality of the service or of the product is really the guiding principle in our approach, and quality.
So when you're doing your labeling, you were saying the story is very important, and I completely agree. The story is very important. How do you translate that into your labeling for those consumers that are just seeing the products on the shelves?
I think I'll snap back to the image part of the presentation, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does the quality, how does the image, how does the story translate into the label? Look at label number 1. Okay, does that really speak quality? Does that really speak authenticity? Does that really speak plants? Does that really speak sustainability? Not really, objectively. Okay. Number 2, you can tell it's a step towards something a little bit better. It looks like, oh, there's a notion of plant. There's an animal, a bird. It's a little bit less busy. Okay. So to me, again, these are symbols. What do people perceive? What do they see? What do they hear? What do they feel? Number 3, there's more plant. Oh, we've got logos that gluten-free, organic plants, no sulfates, no parabens, etc. You've got a little bit of a mandala, and then we've got here, the power of plants, etc. Number 4, it's a little bit more clean, which is where we want it to go. The logos are still there, but they're in the back. So the story is being told. We're communicating quality. We're communicating plant, because plant is what makes us unique. We grow our plants. We want people to know that. Anyway, I'm trying to use this to kind of utilize these images as support for what I'm trying to describe. And that's on the label, but the website is also a touch point. People, I mean, you could have a great branding on your bottle, but if you get to the website and it's inconsistent, I mean, the job is not, to me, it's not about being exceptional. It's about being consistent. And so when we make a change on the bottle, then everything else has to follow, right? So So it's telling the story through, and you can't tell on the bottle here, but we tell a little story written or signed by Stacy and I, like this product did a blah, 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 and then Stacy and Philippe, right? So there's an authenticity, a personal touch to the product.
Yeah, and so the next question ties into that, and it's Ronald, and he asks, are there any alternatives to social media for getting your brand out there? And you spoke on some of those, your labeling and your marketing, your labeling on your website and on your bottles, the social media aspect, and doing the events. What other alternatives would you say, if you could list kind of how to get your name out there?
That's a great question. Our number one strategy since day one has been sampling. And our challenge is to make that sampling, low, that it has a low impact on the environment. So we're constantly trying to work on a more sustainable packaging, whether it's recyclable or biodegradable, etc. But the point is, sampling for us has been the number one strategy to acquire new customers, but mainly to convert the staff in the health food stores. If the staff knows your product, they're going to talk about it. Right? If they haven't tried it, it's hard to be convincing. If they've tried it and they love it, as a brand, you're golden, because they're going to talk about you all day long. Because people like to be guided, right? They say, well, what do you think? What do you use? What should I use? And they say, well, this is what I use, and it's a great company, blah, blah, blah. All because they were able to put their hands on it and go home and try them. So how could you sample your products? How could you sample your services? You go to the baker and you try a little piece of bread. So much easier to buy it if you like it, of course, because you've tried it. And so to me, I'll give you an example. Last weekend we had a fair in our village, and we bought a hairdresser's chair where we could wash people's hair. And so we offered that experience. I mean, that's not what we've been doing, for the last years, but I'm just saying the concept. Give people a piece of what you do. Let them experience what you do. And so for us, the easiest thing has been samples, because people can take them home and try them. So that's been, I cannot emphasize enough the power of sampling.
Yeah, absolutely. The sampling and word of mouth, that's huge for any product. The word of mouth and getting that product into people's hands so that they'll share their own stories with other people about your product. So the next question I have is from David, and David asks, would including the learning process via social media as part of your story be a plus or a negative? Should you wait until you look professional, experienced, and not share the early stages? And what is too much sharing for marketing?
That's such a good question.
Yeah, I guess he's talking about sharing your failures or your failures and your little successes. Obviously you want to share your successes, but it's also sharing those failures a negative or a plus, or do you think so in part of your story?
The way I'm going to answer that question is, I believe in today's time, nobody can afford not using social media. It's too accessible, it's too easy. And I think that because we are authentic, we're not shy to share where we are at this point. This is who I am, this is what I do, and this is where I'm at. And everything's going to evolve. To me, look at what you've got in front of you. I was sharing number one. Like, I was totally sharing it. And looking back, it's like, whoa, what is that? But at that moment, we were convinced. And then people could feel our passion. They could feel our authenticity. So to me, it's more important about being yourself than about being perfect. Because where you are today and where you'll be in 10 years has nothing to do with it. But that's okay. Because where we are today and where we'll be in 10 years has nothing to do with it. And that's okay. So I think there's more benefits to sharing and getting involved in social media. Maybe it's smart not to spend all sorts of advertisement money, But to think I better not get out there because I'm not perfect yet, I would consider that a mistake. I would say keep it simple, be consistent, maybe not committing to posting on Facebook every day because you may not have valuable content for such a thing, but to be there, to be present, because people want to know what you're doing. People, when you're authentic and when you're serving, they want to know, what are you doing? Where do you make it? How, people want to know. So I think in one sentence, there's way more benefits to being out in social media without being perfect, but being yourself than to think, oh, I'll just wait, if not now, when? Like, when is it perfect? It's never perfect. There's always something to improve, right? And so early on, maybe pick one or two platforms and go easy, but be there, be present. I think it's too cheap. It's too powerful not to be used.
Yeah, absolutely. And on sharing those failures, I find that we don't, at least with our company, we don't share our failures. We don't broadcast them publicly, but we definitely discuss them with others. And sometimes we broadcast them publicly, but we definitely discuss them with others so that we can get feedback. And we find that the more we share stumbling blocks or issues we're having, the more answers we get to these problems from people by sharing what those stumbling blocks are. And if we weren't doing that, we might never find some solutions, or we might find what we think is a solution and there turns out to be a better one out there that we wouldn't have known about unless we would have shared that information. At least, definitely in the beginning, it can't hurt. That's for sure. When you're building up the list of people, that's when you're really going to get your support and be able to, your customers are going to get a feeling of building along with you, like they're helping and they're part of your company and growing it. I think there's huge advantage to that. Next question is from Brian. Brian asks, I don't know if you could answer this question, but without leaking current R&D ideas, but are you planning on diversifying into natural home cleaning products?
That's a great question. We are definitely looking to diversify into more body products. We currently work with a partner that is anchored in the house cleaning, and we don't think that Oneka is going to, within the next 10 years, I don't see us going there. We're going to expand. Our strategy is Oneka is known for hair, okay? When people think Oneka, they think shampoo. When they think Oneka, they don't think, we have a body lotion, but we're associated with hair. So we know that's our strength, that's our core, that's our core, sorry. And we're going to develop from there. So the next 3 or 4 products coming out are more hair related, treatments, etc. Our core clientele is mostly women with sometimes colored hair, dried hair, etc. So we know that our core customers will appreciate more hair products. And so why not household cleaner? Because it's really a different segment. It's related, you'd say. Sure, if it was sustainable and biodegradable, etc., it could fly. But it's kind of a two different. You could buy a super good household cleaning product at 2 liters for $6, right? Our shampoos are sold $14 for 16 ounce. So it's a different category. It's a different segment. And I think in the big picture, maybe we could end up there. But I think we have a lot of different steps. Before we could get toothpaste, deodorant, skincare. Like, there's so much that is closer to our core before going there. It's a great thinking. And by the way, we need to catch up a lot on R&D. In the last 2 years, we've been lagging because we had other priorities. But we're for the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to be developing new products. And to me, how we base our choices is not based on what we think is relevant. It's based on what our customers tell us. And I think I've mentioned before, to have an exchange back and forth, two-way conversation. This is the result. Like, the new products we're coming out with is the result of me talking to hundreds and hundreds of people. It's not Stacy and I sitting in our office and say, hey, we're going to do this. we consult with people. We consult, and we talk to and say, what's relevant? What do you want? You know, what's needed? And I talk to my stores and I say, tell me what you need. You know, I don't want to bring like the 20th skincare and what is relevant? What are people looking for? So that's it. It's just a little additional insight.
Yeah, and what are your thoughts on people offering huge amounts of product lines? And I know this is especially in like the body care industry. Some companies will have 200 different products, and they start those fairly quickly without, you know, slowly building into other products. They'll start with 30 or 40 different products. Do you think that's good for diversity and getting as many different kinds of customers as possible? Or do you think it's better to focus on those core products and slowly build out?
Our approach is definitely more on the slow growth. I believe diversity is extremely healthy. I also believe that diversity pushed too far becomes being spread out, and then you're not known for anything. You're known for everything. So I think being where we are today, our strategy is definitely build the core before we really start spreading out. I mean, I think it's easy in our industry to come out with, like, you know, a face cream for this and a lotion for that, and then end up with 150 SKUs. But I think in our case, where we are, we need to really build our core and be sensitive to making sure we introduce relevant product. Relevant product to me is our guiding principle. It's not so much about a quantity, but it's to make sure that whatever we have is relevant and there's a movement in it. And it's the same thing. I mean, you've got an apple orchard. If you've got, you know, 15 different varieties and one of them just constantly produces bad results, wean it out. It's not useful. It's not relevant. And so it's not so much about us having an idea of how many products we want as much as it's about trying the markets. And we're going to make mistakes. You know, there's probably times where we'll launch something and it's going to, we thought it would work and it doesn't, but it's okay. It's part of a learning process. But to answer your question specifically, we don't have a number in mind. I mean, there's big companies, you know, that have hundreds and hundreds of products, and will we be there one day? Maybe, but it's not clear that that's what we aspire to as much as we want to just be relevant in the market.
Yeah, I agree. Would you mind stop sharing your screen there? I totally agree, and I see this in permaculture a lot when people get into the homesteading, get into permaculture, and what they'll end up doing is diving way too deep, way too quick. They'll want chickens, goats, pigs, 50 different tree types, and just a ton of things in the system all at once right away without having the experience of working with each of those systems individually. And in permaculture, we're trying to create closed loop systems as much as possible. So when you have one thing, you all of those individual, we'll say products, have needs, and then they have productions. So all of those needs need to be met within a closed line solution. So if you start putting 50, 60 different products or different things within that system, all of those things have needs, and now you got to add all of those, and it can get way out of control really quick and overwhelming to the point where you feel like giving up, or it's just too much and too quick.
I have another insight when it comes to that. I think, especially in our industry, there's almost, like, I would call a disease. What's new? What's new? What's new? What's new? And what's new? Nothing. Everything's going well. Like, we've got this. We've got, you know, what's new? What's new? What's new? Like, people, it's like, what's new? What's coming out? This year, nothing. Like, and so I think it's okay to go at your pace and not react or respond to every single request. Oh, why don't you do a lotion with this? We could, but, you know, if I hear it 15, 20 times, I'm going to start thinking, okay, you know, there's something here. But I think it's too easy to just, I think it's harder to say no than to say yes, but it's more powerful to say no than to say yes. And this is Joel Salatin. I learned that from him. He's like, you know, sometimes it's more important what you say no to than what you say yes to. And I think you define yourself more But I would say, I think we're conditioned because of the big companies that have millions of dollars in budgets, and all they do is this is new this, new that. It's superficial. Sometimes it's not real. It's like, the growth and renewal is normal and natural, but I think it's got its own pace, and I think we can get anxious and overexcited. And you made such a good point. I see my brother is starting a pasture pork business, and this year he had, I'll do ducks and I'll do chickens. And he told me, I had shared with him, I thought he was doing that, and it was a mistake. Just focus on your pigs. And he told me this summer, is like, wow, for my 100 chickens, I spent more time than my 50 pigs. And he's going to make 20 times the amount of money with his pigs, right? So that's a farming example, but I just think it's the same thing. Like, you launch a new product, you have to create a label, create a barcode, include it in your catalog, take pictures. It's a long process. It's not just, it's out. Like, so it has to be relevant. And I think the business has to be ready to, like you said, add another production and logistics and managing of inventory to it. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You nailed it right on the head. That's when you're looking in permaculture, we'll say pigs. Pigs require certain things. They require food, they require water, they require penning, they require mud, and then they produce things. They produce manure, they produce liquid manure, they produce meat. And so all of these things, especially if you're trying to do a closed loop system, you have to be able to raise or find sustainable methods of providing what their needs are and dealing with what they produce. And so, like you were saying with products, yeah, you got to look at not only, it's great you have a new product, but all of these inputs that have to go into it, and in your marketing. Now that new product needs to take up space in your marketing campaigns. And so, yeah, it's a lot more than people think to add something new to a system. You really got to think it out and really map it out almost, I think. Next question I have is, you guys offer a wholesale line, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so with the wholesale line, do you prefer wholesale or retail, and why would that be?
So when you say wholesale, you mean like a reseller?
Like you are packaging 50-gallon drums of your shampoo and selling it to a company who relabels it and sells it.
Private label.
Private label, yeah.
Yeah, private label. We are open to doing it in very specific cases. Of course, we don't want to cannibalize our own markets. We don't want to confuse our customers. But for us, our main focus as a business is to build our brand, because that's what's the most sustainable. It's what is the most recognizable and creates the most equity. But we're deeply committed to making a difference when it comes to the environment. And when we think of, on a daily basis, the amount of shampoo that's being used in the world that's not biodegradable, we kind of lose our ego very quick and say, you know what? If that person operates in that market, it's about getting a better product out there more than about building our brand. And sometimes people are better equipped than we are at marketing in a different environment. So it's not so much about putting the brand forward as much as it's about allowing the technology, if you will, or the quality of the products, the fact that they're biodegradable and healthy for people. So that's, to me, that's where that concept of private labeling or producing for another brand would be relevant.
Yeah, when we were in the body care industry, we loved private labeling. It was great for us because we didn't have to worry about the marketing and the labeling and the extra, because there's a lot of extra cost in that labeling in the bottles, and being able to just produce a massive quantity, ship it out to them, and let them put our product in theirs. We were fine with that. We didn't require them to put our logo or tell their customers that their products came from us. They could market it, and we were fine with competing with them because they're buying our own products to compete with us. That's great for us. Let's see. Next question I have is, how much do you rely on your physical mailing list for your catalog versus your email and social lists? Which is better for advertising your products and your story?
Well, currently, our online business is very minimal. It represents between 5 to 10% of our global sales. We're just starting to build our system, our website for more online sales. We use social media and newsletter more for communicating than selling, if that makes sense. We have been struggling with our mailing list. We actually had an issue with Campaign Monitor a few weeks back. We had to erase 80% of our mailing list. Something weird had happened with it wasn't huge. It was 1,500, but we had a mistake in our website where people could register, but it wasn't double checked. So a lot of spam came. So we sent a newsletter for our open house at the farm, and then Campaign Monitor closed their account. And they said you had a spam rate of 2.5%. All this to say that we're not strong on mailing. Facebook, we're okay. We've got 2,100 likes, which is, we more than doubled in the last 6 months. But we're still, from a social media, from a newsletter standpoint, we're still a small little player. We are committed to building those platforms. But so far, what's been the most powerful thing for Oneka has been the word of mouth in our stores. Staff talk about us, customers talk about us. We've built loyalty, and we're definitely benefiting from that. I hope it answers the question.
Yeah, it does, absolutely. We had a love-hate relationship with our physical mailing orders, with the catalog, specifically catalog mailing orders, in that the customers loved it. They loved the graphics, the little book they could flip through and get we put a lot of work and effort into those. But man, the shipping, there's a lot of shipping costs to getting those catalogs out. A lot of ink has to be used, and it's expensive to print a catalog. And the other thing we dealt with was if we had a change of price, it didn't just update everywhere, to all those catalogs when we changed them. Those catalogs are in print. And so our customers would call in saying, I see that it's supposed to be $29.99, not $49.99, something like that. And what we ended up doing is if someone called in like that, we would respect the price they were seeing on the catalog. But that caused a bit of headache and confusion for the staff as well. But customers loved getting that mailing order list, so we did get a lot of business out of it. But it was another thing, like we were talking about. You're adding, your catalog is a product. You're adding another product. It might be a free product, but all of those products have needs, and you have to be able to provide for all those needs. Next question, it's a quick question from Michelle. She asked, I hope it's Michelle, but she asked, do you use sea buckthorn oil in any of your products?
We do not. We know there's actually a local company that called Mount Eco. That's what they're based on. And I know that sea buckthorn oil is a very powerful and useful oil in cosmetics and body care, hair care products. So we are this winter going through a huge planning for our farm for the next years. What are we going to grow? What are we going to use? How are we going to develop products based on that? And we've actually talked about sea buckthorn. So far, we're not using it, but we completely are aware of its powers.
All right, excellent. Next question. This one's from David, and we'll see. Have you ever heard of Dr. Bronner's soap company?
Yeah, absolutely. We think they're extremely original. They're one of the pioneers in their industry, and they're very unique. For those of you who know them, their packaging, it's like one big story. It's one big message, one big book, all over the place. And I think they took a very strong position in the market, and they've built strong, I think they've got huge fans. They've got their fans are loyal. I believe their products are very good, and we've looked at them and got inspired in some way. Not so much that we want to imitate or want to recreate something in our own way, but they're very unique. They took a stand. they know themselves and they know their customers, and they're radical. And people, their customers know that. So I think from a marketing standpoint, they're all over the place. Like like you think, what is this? Like, you have to like their style. Like, some people want something clean, but they're successful in their own way. They know themselves, they know their customers, and they deliver on their promise.
Yeah, and that question came from David, and he was asking specifically about those labels. He thinks they're so ugly and packed full of too much information.
Yeah.
Well, he says that it seems to be a marketing nightmare, yet the product is amazingly successful. And a lot of that could be because they've built that customer base, and they have such loyal customers that they can afford to play with that kind of stuff and be able to experiment a lot more than a startup company could be able to do.
I think something they did very well, and they're still doing, is they're using their labels as a billboard. They put their messages across, and whether it be like a position they're taking for this or against that, or just a philosophy, that their labels, they've used them as like marketing, just telling stories. And I think storytelling is very powerful. People remember stories. People forget facts, but they remember stories. Such and such guy did this, or so I think they're doing that really well.
All right, we are almost out of time. I have two more questions for you, if you wouldn't mind sticking around for just two more.
Absolutely.
All right. The first question is from Brian. He asks, when partnering with outside vendors, how do you ensure they're maintaining quality that's up to the standards for your products? Do you have on-site visits, things of that nature?
We do have visits. I think nothing replaces a physical visit. We try as much as we can to meet them, because once you've met somebody, it changes the relationship, if possible, or somebody from our team meeting them. And I think to start, we start with very clear expectations. This is the minimum price. This is how the products have to be placed, and it's not so much us telling them. We agree on something, but we start with a clear agreement, and so then it's really about being responsible for each other's promises. And so I think to start with clear expectations and really communicate that, and it really helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I have a quick comment that the Big Five for Life, that's John P. Strelicky. If you guys want to look that up, I put a link in the chat. I'll post this other one that's a better link that's direct to Amazon for you guys if you want to check out that book. All right. Next question I have, the last question, is a loaded one. That's why I saved it for last. If I am just starting out with a company and a product, what would your recommendations on starting be, as far as investment and labeling, supplies, marketing, et cetera, et cetera? What's kind of the step-by-step from your experience of going through those growing pains? Would you, if you were starting all over, what steps would you take?
I had that discussion with a friend today who's starting. She's an artist, and she's starting to produce art creation. And what we didn't do is we didn't take any time to study our markets. We didn't take any time to understand what we were doing. We just jumped. And I would do the same tomorrow, because that's my personality. But at the same time, we probably took 3 years instead of 6 months to end up at the same point. And that was my way of learning. To take the time, just understand what it is you want to do. Understand your markets. And it sounds so boring and so fundamental, but just to take the time to just educate yourself and talk to people who may be in that industry. And to me, this is not about having them tell you that what you're going to do is not going to work. It's more about maybe refining your strategy or your approach, or like I'm somebody who just starts and learn. And a lot of business people say that's the way you should do it, because if you think too much and analyze too much, you're never going to do it. But I think you could do a little bit of both. I think that while in action, maybe start something on the side and while learning, and eventually just boom, going for it. But my personality is one where I like to personal energy is something that's renewable. But money is renewable too, but sometimes it takes a little bit longer. So what could you what could you do on your own without investing a lot of money? And I think, yes, starting with a few things and mastering the basic rather than trying to do everything at once. I guess you could say start small, think big, and that's my way though, because it depends on who you are, and how you think. My personality is really one where I jump and I learn as I go, but I think it's smart to maybe take a little bit of time to study and learn, and refine the project which in the end, it's like sharpening your saw for an additional 10 minutes. You may end up cutting your tree quicker than starting to cut right away and just, working with a dull axe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Philippe, thank you so very much for being with us today. It was a great conversation, great question and answer session, great presentation. It was great having you. Guys, once again, it's Oneka, Oneka elements.com. Go there, check out the products. They're great products. Sign up for the newsletter, and you'll get a first-hand glimpse of how their company is marketing to you as being on their mailing list. Once again, thank you very much, Philippe.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, guys. The next week we have with us Troy Martz. Troy is a specialist in gasification. This guy has some very cool products, one specifically. And if you're into gasification and growing copsine wood and using that wood to produce power, you're really not going to want to miss out on that presentation. Just head over to tv.permaethos.com. You'll see it in the show list, and you can subscribe to next week's presentation. Once again, guys, we need those YouTube subscriptions, so please head over to youtube.com/permaculture, hit subscribe. Once we have those 1,000 subscribers, we can really reach out to a large audience, even more so than we have now. You guys have been great. The word of mouth is going. It's obvious because we're getting more and more visitors, viewers every day. We're extremely excited. Once again, Toby Hemingway's Creating Gaia's Garden. The course is up and available right now. The actual talking portion of the course, where you'll be in a live classroom environment with Toby, begins on October 6th. October 1st is the last date. You'll be able to get that early bird $100 off special. Thank you again, guys. We'll see you next week. Have a great day.